Okay, here we are. I'm back again. It took me a while. Did have some problems with my internet, and I'm hoping I've got all those taken care of. You may not know, but I'm actually living in a Central American country, so we are considered second world. And if we get a big storm, which are in the rainy season, it really messes with the internet. And we've just had a big storm, and I've been without stable internet for quite a while. But I promised you a video about who I felt like we were before gastric bypass. First of all, I just want to say before I start that I realize that's just a really broad subject. It's as individual as we are individuals. There's not a one size fits all when we consider having gastric bypass. First of all, pretty much across the board, if you have insurance, there's got to be comorbidities, at least one, that fit the criteria that make you eligible for gastric bypass. But just from my perspective and some of my thoughts on who we are before gastric bypass, I thought I'd give that a go. And you may agree, you may not agree, but at least we'll talk about it a little bit. So it was like in January of 2003, about the time I was turning 45 years old. I had 4 children that were mostly grown, and of those 4 children at the time, I had 4 grandchildren. I was a single parent. I'd been raising the kids alone for 17 years after my divorce. I dated just real infrequently. Most of that was not because even I was heavy, because, believe it or not, there was a couple of times unsolicited I had guys that would come around and hang out at the house, showed interest in dating me and being with me, and it was simply because my first relationship with my first husband, was less than healthy, and I didn't trust myself to make good choices. So for that reason, I was basically alone for 17 years. I just, was focused on the years that I had the kids in the house, and I wanted to be as good a mother as I could during those days without having to deal with a new relationship, possibly a relationship with someone that was going to be the same, or even worse, someone who would not treat my children the way that they needed to be treated. I also realized, as I was turning 45 and had been alone all those years, and my children were growing up, and the last one was pretty much the age of emancipation, that I didn't want to be alone. I had filled my life with my children, and one by one they'd left the nest and gotten married, and I was facing very quickly on being alone. So I didn't want to turn 46 with a 60-inch waist and a BMI of 52. I'd always been a chubby kid. My mom told me I was skinny and pretty much sickly before the age of 2, when I had my tonsils removed. And I guess after that I made up for lost time, because I can remember at the supper table growing up that I would be told I had had enough food not to eat anymore. And then Mom would say that I ate enough for 2, and my brother, who was younger, that he barely ate enough to keep a bird alive. But I can tell you, even though I was chubby growing up, I never in my wildest imagination ever dreamed I would weigh 311 pounds. You have this self-image, probably everyone does it, but throughout my life I've always had a self-image of being overweight. And even though my BMI is correct now, I struggle with self-image. It's like that, Lucy, 5 more pounds. If I can lose 5 more pounds, my body will probably be that perfect form I have this, concept in my mind of. But I didn't ever imagine I would end up weighing 311 pounds. I didn't start out obese, and wanted to look at how that happened. And I think it's the same for a lot of us. What happens is, over time, I think you reach a point that you're either going to confront the situation, or you're just going to deny it and avoid it. It's kind of like the dishes are in the sink. Am I going to do the dishes after supper? Or am I going to pretend I'm going to avoid that situation? I'm just going to deny that I've got to confront that for a little while. I think that applies to a lot of stuff in our life. And that's kind of what I did. It's kind of like I had my first child. I gained 40 pounds. Yeah, I wanted to lose that weight, but I kind of avoided looking in the mirror so I didn't have to deal with it. So you reach a point of either denial and avoidance or changed. And it was like I avoided everything over time. As I gained more weight, I avoided everything over time that showed me what I'd really become. I avoided doctor scales. My gosh, if I went to the doctor, I had to be dying because I didn't want to get up on the scales and look at that number or hear them. You know, it was okay that they weighed me. Just don't say it out loud. Don't tell me what it was because I could deny it. So, and it was the same, you know, with like stadium chairs. You get in the stadium chairs and the arms are here, and then you've got this space below the armrest, and your thighs, they spill over into the seat of the people beside you. It was horrible. Airplane seating was a nightmare. I probably really should have had 2 seats instead of 1, but I would shove my body into the airplane seats, and the mound of flesh would be in front of me, and then it was like open the seatbelt all the way and squeeze it around my body and clip it, barely, but it clipped. And my all-time favorite is the plastic molded chairs that you can get at the discount stores. I think even Dollar General has them. I don't know, they used to, but they're white molded plastic and they're stackable, you know. Well, number one, my fear was, were the legs going to collapse? Because I've seen that happen on people who are rocking back in them that aren't overweight. And number two, I've had it happen more than once. When you stand up, you get that bucket suction effect on your hiney, and it's got to be pulled down. As best as I could, I denied I was happy about my size and appearance. Only in the eyes of peers were I reminded of my size. I was reminded how distasteful my appearance was to some. My bathroom mirror was my best accepting friend of sorts, because I only allowed it to show me myself from the shoulders up, and I didn't look so bad from that perspective. But over the years, the more I denied my out-of-control eating and avoided seeing my body, the bigger my body had become. So basically what had happened is I had sailed along for about 15 years, hauling an extra body around 161 pounds, and my health on the surface was fine. On the surface, I was actually healthier than a lot of people who were not overweight were. I didn't miss work. I was almost sick. I'd have the occasional cold. More my health was the morning migraines or the morning headaches that I was having. Now I didn't really know what was going on. But then in 2001, the volcano of health-related problems that had been building pressure under the surface for years began to erupt. My blood pressure at its highest reached 200 over 120 with high blood pressure medicine. It was no wonder I was having killer headaches in the morning. Sleep apnea added to my headaches and fed my high blood pressure. During my sleep apnea study, I took 2 breaths and missed 8. When I woke up in the morning, the first thing I was aware of was the overwhelming, throbbing, whooshing pain in my head. I really believe I was more exhausted at times from trying to sleep than if I had stayed awake. I remember waking up in the mornings with my arms asleep, chronic lower back pain, numb legs, numb arms. During the night, I would wake up grasping for air when acid reflux would come up in my throat, nearly choking me. I was completely and utterly exhausted. I didn't even realize how bad I felt from carrying 161 pounds with me, basically an extra person in my body day and night. You know, you really don't get to be that size. You don't just wake up and the day before you're 120 pounds, and the day after you're 311 pounds. It really is a process of getting there. And I think it's kind of like the rat in the maze that gets the shock to get to the food at the end of the maze, and they're willing to sustain more and more of electrical shock in order to get that food, that reward. I think we kind of do that to ourselves when we're gaining our weight and we're going through that process, and we acclimate ourselves to feeling bad, and it becomes the way of life. It becomes the new normal, and we don't even realize how bad we're feeling in the new normal, because that's where we live, that's who we are, and that's who we've become. There's something I want to address about gaining weight. You know, we all gain weight for various reasons. Of course, weight gain is emotional. Of course, we bury emotions. Of course, we self-soothe, we comfort, we medicate. There's a high that you can get, much like taking too much alcohol. From eating too much food, you can get a euphoria. But let's lay aside the emotional reasons for a while. I truly believe, especially in the United States, in let's say the developed countries, because in the UK the same thing applies there. In the developed countries, in the first world countries, I truly believe that the process of consuming food is no longer what it was meant to be. What do I mean? So it was Stephen Babcock in the 1990s who originally coined the phrase hidden hunger. He coined the phrase when he was doing experiments on the nutritional needs of cattle. When I first stumbled across that phrase 2 years ago, that I felt like explained even a lot in my life 2 years ago, a lot of my food drives. It was something I really had to search to find. I basically just stumbled upon the phrase, and I don't even remember if I read it first or if I found it on the internet first, and I tried to do some more studies on it, but there's precious little out there. But I knew that it fit the criteria of my life. But within the last 2 years, this phrase has really caught on. In fact, today it has a human application and definition. So here's the human application and definition. Human hunger is chronic lack of vitamins and minerals that affect 1 in 3 people around the world. Okay. At 311 pounds, I know that I had a chronic lack of vitamins and minerals. Before my surgery, maybe 6 months to a year before my surgery, they had come around to the place I was employed and were doing a blood drive. And I waddled all of my weight up into the trailer they'd brought out, or it was a mobile home actually, they'd brought out to the parking lot, rolled my sleeve up. I'm a big girl, I got lots of blood to give. But guess what? They turned me down, and they actually advised me at that point that I should probably go see someone that day because my red blood count was so low. Well, what does that mean? That meant I was anemic. You can be overweight and malnourished. You can be normal weight and malnourished, and you can see the photos of the African children with the bloating bellies and be malnourished. Let's look at nutritional deficiencies in plant. Nutritional deficiencies in plant come in the forms of microdeficiencies or macrodeficiencies. Microdeficiencies or trace minerals are a physiological plant disorder which occurs when a micronutrient is deficient in the soil in which a plant grows. Micronutrients are distinguished from macronutrients by the relatively low quantities needed by the plant. It also represents a human physiological disorder which occurs when a person's diet does not contain required nutrients, or when illness, such as diarrhea or malaria, cause rapid loss of nutrients through feces or vomiting. Now, the difference between micronutrients and macro is just the quantities. It's not that you don't need micronutrients. You do. You need them in lesser quantities than macronutrients. Okay, so this is something we're going to look at, is what the plant nutrition is like and why that affects us. We're eating food and we're getting plenty of calories. Why aren't we getting the nutrition we need? My thought on that, having lived in the United States for over 40 years, before being gone for more than 10 years, or no, I'm sorry, well, about 10 years, is that the soil is depleted of micro and macronutrients. Why do I say that? Because the first place we landed in Central America, we were astounded at how wonderful all the produce tasted that came out of the ground there. The first country we landed in was a self-sustaining country. In other words, the soil still had all the nutrients it needed to produce crop without interference or help from human beings. And the papaya and the pineapple and the oranges and the lettuce and the tomatoes were so voluptuous, full of flavor, satisfying. See, I had realized before I left the United States, when I first had my gastric bypass, I decided I was going to do a low-carb, high-protein, like an Atkins diet to lose my weight. Because I was always a huge carnivore before I had gastric bypass. Well, by the time that we were leaving the United States to live overseas, I had realized I was protein intolerant. Almost always when I ate a piece of meat, I had, even if it was lean without grease, if I, whatever, I just didn't digest it. I felt like crap. I felt sick. And so I had realized I had become protein deficient or protein intolerant. And I began moving to a plant-based diet as natural as possible, because I also knew that if I was on a plant-based diet that had very little cooking, very little tampering, that I was also going to get more nutrition than if I ate something that was totally processed and totally cooked. And that was a process. I just didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to do this. I've been my own best guinea pig, trial and error over the years. So when we got to the first Central American country where we lived, we noticed immediately, I noticed that while I struggled to be a vegetarian in the United States, I just was never satiated. I would eat a huge salad, I would eat this, I would eat that, but I was always hungry. I was always looking. I was always driven to find something else to eat. Got to that first Central American country and I was like, this isn't so bad. I actually felt nourished. I actually felt satisfied. I actually felt I didn't rove all the time looking for something more to eat. Untreated subclinical deficiencies can manifest as serious disabilities or life-threatening disorders. The really good example of that would be, back when they had the wooden ships with sails and they would travel with sailors across the ocean for months on end, they would get scurvy from lack of vitamin C, so they started carrying vitamin C rich foods with them. In the United States, they use chemical fertilizers and additives that are supposed to help the plants grow bigger, stronger, more beautiful fruit. And by and large, you get bigger, stronger, more beautiful fruit. But you're not getting nutrients in that. If you've ever done any studying on bodybuilding, a bodybuilder will take steroids and it gives them mass, they gain size, and as soon as they quit taking the steroids, they begin to lose that mass or that size. You know what steroids does? It adds water to your body. And basically what the agricultural business is doing now is they're giving the plant steroids, the nitrogen, some of the things that they're adding to the soil is not natural. And it's like what it does for the human. It just adds water, and the water adds size. But that doesn't mean that that plant has micronutrients. Plus it has artificial macronutrients that really doesn't do anything for it besides just the size. When you taste a tomato from the grocery store, in the summer we would grow tomatoes and we'd wait for July when the tomatoes would really start setting on good, and we'd eat those wonderful warm tomatoes out of the garden, and there was so much flavor. And in the winter months, we would eat the cardboard tomatoes from the grocery store. Okay, so what I'm saying is I really feel like we have gotten so far away from what eating should be. Not only is the soil depleted in the United States uh, over the centuries of over farming, not letting the ground rest, um, erosion, uh, not adding organic fertilizers and micro and macronutrients back into the soil, because every plant, not doing crop rotation, not doing companion planting, every plant takes from the soil some, but they leave something. So there are ways to do it without doing it as big business and agriculturally strip the land, make it a barren wasteland that grows fruit but grows it without nutrition. So not only have we lost that in our foods, and we've lost the connection between the land and the foods we eat, we're eating more things out of boxes, cans, bottles, bags, you name it. And all of that food, besides being deplete, when it hits the processing plant, is not even more deplete because it's been processed at high temperatures. And those lack of micro and macronutrients is your body's, when it drives you to eat, and you weigh 311 pounds and you're still hungry and you're going from here and you're going from, it's not all emotional. Yes, it's emotional. Yes, we self-medicate. Yes, chocolate, I'm on my period. Chocolate, I had a fight. Chocolate, I had a bad day. Give me a pizza, I'll eat a half a pan pizza by myself and be hungry, but I'm still not satisfied. Yeah, it's emotional, but it's also physiological. Something I want you to think about now at this point, with or without gastric bypass, pre or post gastric bypass, is nourishing your body. If you will give your body what it needs so it quits driving you to look for something else to eat, you'll find some rest and peace in your body. I'm not saying you won't go the next time you have a fight with your husband and look for something to stuff in your face. I'm not saying that won't happen. But when you have the emotional and the physiological working together to drive your body, you're in a constant cycle of looking for that next food, that next bite, that next something. We could continue to talk about many reasons that the food in the U.S. is pretty much depleted of the nutrients that it once had. We could talk about things like Roundup and how it disturbs the bacteria in the soil, or the micro and macronutrients that the plants convert from the nutrients in the soil. We could talk about GMO crops as a whole, how they are replacing the heirloom seeds, how it's very hard to find something that hasn't been contaminated by GMO seeds these days. But I want to look at one final reason to bring out one final reason that crops in the United States probably don't have as much nutrients as they once had. This article is actually given to me yesterday, and it's an article from the New York Times, and it talks about breeding the nutrition out of our food. Anybody who knows me will tell you I am not on any kind of prescription drugs because of the bariatric surgery. This year, I have been able to move from injectable iron and injectable vitamin B to sublingual vitamin B and a natural iron supplement that I take by mouth. So that's a milestone for me. But with that said, currently I am on no prescription medicine. I truly believe in letting your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. I believe if the Creator, whoever you believe him to be, I believe he's the Judaic God, but the Creator was so brilliant when he created foods that he color-coded them. So that if you eat a rainbow of foods, if you make a rainbow, look in your market or in your refrigerator and pick a rainbow every day to consume. If you eat a rainbow, and if you also note the shape, for instance, avocados are very good for the heart, kind of a shape of a heart, and the ovaries, kind of a shape of an ovary. Many of the fruits and vegetables that you consume have a semblance to an organ in our body so that it kind of gives us a clue what they're good for. Okay, so eat a rainbow and be aware of the shapes. You need to have better eyesight. Eat some more grapes. If you do an internet search, you'll find articles and articles on eating a rainbow and being aware of the shapes of your fruits and vegetables to get the most nutrition your body needs. That aside, there's a thought that's been out there for a while, and this article was brought to my attention a couple of days ago, that the selective breeding, the hybridization, has been going on for a lot of years because they're trying to get something that produces more, they're trying to get something that goes to market better, they're trying to get something that's more shelf stable, they're trying to basically bring the dollar up. It's come to my attention through this article, and it's very, very good, that the new technology that's out there currently has allowed researchers to compare the phytonutrient contents of wild plants with the produce in our supermarket. Now here's the thing, it's wild plants. Where do wild plants grow? They grow in the wild. The soil hasn't been tilled, the soil hasn't been stripped, the seed is not overbred. Just it's seeds itself, grows, dies, seeds itself. The plants around it are synergistic. When you plant a plant, every plant takes something, every plant gives something. And when you companion plant, you benefit the plants around it. And that happens in the wild. So wild dandelions, once a springtime treat for Native Americans, have 7 times more phytonutrients than spinach, which we consider a superfood in the United States. A purple potato native to Peru has 28 times more cancer-fighting anthocyans than common russet potatoes. One species of apple has a staggering 100 times more phytonutrients than the Golden Delicious displayed in our supermarket. So this is saying the things that we see in the wild, the things, let's call them the heirloom things. For instance, we have indigenous and or heirloom things here where I'm at now, and we're used to the azure pear, or the soft pear like you get in the market. Our pear here is very hard. In fact, it's harder than a Granny Smith apple, but it is so juicy, so watery, so full of flavor that it's just phenomenal. And we say here it's criollo. That means it was always here, it was native to the area, it thrives in this soil, nobody messes with it, it's just indigenous, it's wild. It says that over time, that throughout our ages, our farming ancestors have chosen the least bitter plants to grow in their garden. It's known that many of the beneficial phytonutrients have a bitter, sour, or astringent taste. Second, earlier farmers favored plants that were relatively low in fiber and high in sugar, starch, and oil. These energy-dense plants were pleasurable to eat and provided calories needed to fuel a strenuous lifestyle. The more palatable our fruits and vegetables became, however, the less advantageous they were to our health. It has 10 times more protein than the corn we eat today, but it is not soft nor sweet enough to tempt our ancestors. Over thousands of years, this plant underwent several spontaneous mutations. Nature's rewriting of the genome freed the corn of their casing and turned a spike of grain into a cob with kernels of many colors. Our ancestors decided that this transformed corn was tasty enough to plant in their gardens. By the 1400s, corn was central to the diet of people living throughout Mexico and Americas. So, this is the progression of our corn. It goes on to say that when European colonists first came to America, they found Indian corn. Okay, from the Indian corn, of course, the colors of the Indian corn were like yellow, blue, red, olive color, and greenish. Eventually black, and various degrees in between. 2 centuries later, we would learn that the black, red, and blue corn, rich in anthocyanins, I believe, So what I want you to think about, again, is where you're at nutritionally. What are you eating? Are you eating boxes, cans, bags, jars? All of these highly processed things. Are you drinking from bottles, glass bottles, plastic bottles, tin cans? All of those things have been processed at such a high temperature. There's little to no nutrition left. Now, nutrition and calories are two different things. Calories are calories. Calories are fuel. Okay? But if you're not giving your body nutrition, one of these days the car is going to break down. Okay? And we see that. We see that on our bodies when they're supersized and things still aren't working. You would think if food was just about fuel and we were eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day and we weighed 300 pounds, we'd have a lot of fuel on board. But calories does not make your body function at its optimum. Nutrients does. The other thing, really quickly to look at here, that is that in this article they talk about wild things. Want you to note too, if you're in the health food genre at all, if you're aware on the fringes, if you're aware of some of the articles, you have things like maca, you have things like spirulina, chlorea, blue-green algae, you have things like my goodness, I can't even think of all the things that they talk about. That's the new goji berries, superfoods. Why are these superfoods? Because, and they'll even tell you this, there's even articles relating to this, because the best superfoods are still grown without human interference. What does that mean? Well, if you look at algae, spirulina, chlorea, that's harvested wild. That hasn't been grown in a cement tank or in some man-made structure. The nutrients of the wild harvested are far superior to the farm. For instance, if you look at wild-caught salmon as opposed to farm-bred salmon, industry knows, all the articles tell you that wild-caught salmon has better taste, better health, and better nutrients. So our superfoods, what we're calling a superfood, and really, if you really think about it, this is just really pretty sad, what we have done to our foods. Our everyday foods should all be superfoods. Why? Because they should be grown in soils that are rich in macro and micronutrients and phytonutrients and not with chemical nutrients. Okay? Remember, that adds size, but it doesn't necessarily add nutrition. Just like us, we can consume a lot of calories and we can gain size from potato chips, from French fries, from pizza, from all of these processed food. We can gain size, but that doesn't mean we're gaining nutrition. So I know it's really hard in the United States with our lifestyle to think about making a meal without the help of a microwave, without the help of a box, without the help of the freezer, without the help. I know those things are really difficult. Believe me, I do. Because when I had my gastric bypass, I lived in the States and I was in that system. And I was a single mom with 4 kids. So 4 kids. I had raised 4 kids. I didn't have all 4. I had 2 kids in the house at that time, but I still worked full time. And it's really hard. The last thing you want to think about doing when you get home from work, if you've got any kind of drive at all, the travel time, the traffic possibly, you've had a full 8 hours at work, you want to go home, you want to peel vegetables, you want to steam them, you want to make a salad. That is like, just give me the quick and easy way. I'm too tired to do with the rest. But what you gain, if you can make that new muscle, what you gain from what it costs you, the benefits far outweigh what you lose. Even now, when I visit my kids in the state, while I am there, they'll tell you, I may go around the grocery store and buy the latest organic something in a box. I taste it, but I don't normally finish it. I taste it more out of curiosity to know what it tastes like. But my go-to is, give me something fresh. Give me something I can lightly steam myself. Give me something that's going to nourish my body. Because if I go back and I get into that trap of eating all that stuff on the shelves, by the time I get back home here, where I'm at now, I am starved. And I've talked about this so many times with my family and my husband when I get home. It's like, oh, I'm so glad to be home. The food here is so good. It's so satisfying. I felt like I was starved to death by the time I get home. So if you're starving to death, if your body is driving you to look for more nutrients, more foods, if you're never satisfied, even though your stomach's full, take a look at what you're eating. I challenge you. Make a program, make a decision, make a plan that this week I'm going to give something up. What am I going to give up? Give up the easiest thing. What will it be? Is soft drinks easy? Is candy bars easy? Whatever the easiest junk food or non-packaged food item you have in your life. I'm going to call it non-packaged food because it's really not food, it's calories. Okay, whatever that is in your life that you can give up the easiest, give that up. But add something. Add one piece of fruit every day more, okay? And continue that process. Give this up, put something else in. Give this up, put something else in. And eventually, if you're diligent, you'll get to the place where you're consuming at least more nutrition than you are non-nutritious foods. So with that said, that's kind of a look at who we were, and we went all the way into why we were and kind of into maybe where you need to be going from here. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.